Every time a missile flies in the Middle East, a familiar anxiety grips the globe. We hold our breath, check the news, and wait to see if this is the moment a regional skirmish triggers World War III. At the center of that fear are the United States and Iran. For 45 years, these two nations have engaged in a bitter Cold War, defined by burning flags, massive military drills, and aggressive speeches threatening total destruction. But there is a glaring paradox here. Despite the billions spent on heavy weapons and the decades of screaming headlines, the US and Iran have carefully avoided firing directly at each other's soil. Both nations have spent decades refining a calibrated rhythm of escalation, ensuring every blow is delivered with enough force to hurt, but not enough to trigger a total invasion. To understand why this global deadlock hasn't burned down the globe, we have to decode the unwritten rules both nations follow, starting with why sitting down for a simple peace treaty was permanently taken off the table. The zero-trust policy between Washington and Tehran started in 1953. To protect British and American oil interests, the US CIA actively engineered a coup to remove Iran's democratically elected prime minister. In his place, Washington installed a pro-Western monarch, effectively turning a sovereign nation into an American client state. 26 years later, the Iranian public retaliated. The 1979 Islamic Revolution completely dismantled the Western-backed monarchy, shifting power to a new, hard-line religious government. The breaking point arrived months later when Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, taking 52 Americans hostage and holding them in captivity for 444 days. These overlapping historical traumas erased any middle ground. Iran built its modern political identity specifically to oppose American influence, eliminating the foundational trust required to ever sign a conventional peace treaty. With direct diplomacy dead and a homeland invasion guaranteeing massive casualties, both sides had to find an alternative way to fight. They turned the surrounding region into a chessboard. Iran's primary offensive strategy is a sprawling militant network they call the Axis of Resistance. Tehran funds, trains, and arms regional militia groups, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and the Houthis in Yemen. These proxies act as Iran's weapons, striking regional enemies while allowing the Iranian government to deny direct involvement. To counter this, the United States relies on a sprawling network of regional military bases, alongside regional allies like Israel and Saudi Arabia. Together, they form a defensive shield to contain Iranian influence and protect global oil supplies. This proxy architecture creates a stable, lethal equilibrium. Both nations get to project power and inflict serious damage on each other's interests, all while maintaining the plausible deniability they need to avoid an all-out global war. Beyond the military maneuvers in the desert, the conflict extends into the world of global finance and nuclear physics. In 2018, the U.S. exited a fragile 2015 nuclear peace agreement and launched a maximum pressure campaign, slapping Iran with some of the heaviest economic sanctions in modern history. Those sanctions severed Iran from global banking and oil markets, starving their domestic economy and sending the value of the Iranian rial plummeting. Iran retaliated by weaponizing the one thing Washington fears most. They aggressively accelerated their nuclear enrichment program, spinning centrifuges faster to inch closer to the purity levels needed to build a nuclear bomb. It creates an unbreakable cycle. The U.S. refuses to lift sanctions without looking like it surrendered, and Iran refuses to halt its nuclear program because that threat is their only remaining geopolitical leverage. If this equilibrium is so dangerous, why do leaders in Washington and Tehran refuse to dismantle it? Because in American politics, taking a hardline stance against Iran is one of the very few issues that guarantees unified, bipartisan support. Softening that stance is viewed as political suicide. Over in Tehran, the government and the Revolutionary Guards draw their entire ideological legitimacy from fighting Western imperialism. Without the U.S. as a constant looming enemy, their grip on domestic power weakens. The standoff serves a critical function for internal stability. For leaders on both sides, the external threat has become a vital domestic survival mechanism. After 45 years, this standoff has hardened into a permanent, heavily armed balancing act. And it will only end when one side crosses a catastrophic threshold. So how does the deadlock eventually snap? Does Iran finally cross the line and acquire a nuclear weapon? Or does the US successfully squeeze the country until the regime collapses from the inside? Tell us how you think this shadow war ends down in the comments. And if you want to understand the unwritten rules of the world's most complex conflicts, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.